Good morning. You're with San Fernando Open Bible. This is Morning Devotions, The Father's Heart. I'm Pastor Mike Lumbard. Thanks for joining us wherever you're watching from this morning. My granddad was an incredible man of God, but he had a time that he had a stroke. And during this time, he actually died and went to heaven. But my grandmother was praying, and he actually came back. Now, Granddad would tell me he didn't want to come back, not because he didn't love us, but he said it was so incredible. And so he came back and lived for some time after that. But I remember talking to Granddad, and I would say to him, "Tell me what heaven is like." And he would burst into tears, and he couldn't even come up with words to describe it. He says the experience was amazing. You know, he couldn't describe what it was like being in the presence of God. In Isaiah 6, starting at verse 1, it says, "In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord sitting on a throne, high and lifted up, and the train of his robe filled the temple." Uzziah was one of the good kings of Judah, the southern kingdom. He was loved. People loved him. He was king for 52 years. The first 24 was with his father. He was a godly king. But the end of his life, he ended poorly. But when he died, people were mourning. They were mourning because they had had a godly king, and I think there was something they also wanted more. It's significant that Isaiah was in the temple. It was 90 feet by 30 feet, 45 feet high, and God filled the temple. I want to share something with you, and I want to tell you that I believe in the presence of God that our priorities begin to shift. During difficult times, Isaiah was in the temple. It shows priority. Some people only turn to God during the good times. Anyone can serve God during the good times. But during difficult times in your life, in your family, difficult times in your country, like Isaiah with Israel, that's where you have to make some choices about what you're going to do and how you're going to live. And with Isaiah, he made a choice. In the year that King Uzziah died, he was in the temple. Second verse in Isaiah 6 says, "Above it stood seraphim. Each one had 6 wings. With 2 he covered his face, with 2 he covered his feet, and with 2 he flew." It really gives some significance. So with 2, he's covering his eyes, with his feet. It signifies worship, and the flying signifies service. So worship takes priority over service. So in our lives, we have to make a choice of priorities of putting God first, seeking his face. Worship comes before service. Verse 3 says, "And one cried to another, 'Holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is filled with his glory.'" Not just the temple, but the whole earth was filled. God's heart, this is what he's about. This is missions. Fill the earth with the glory of the Lord. So it's showing priority. I like Mary and Martha in Luke 10. It starts at verse 38. Now listen to this real quick. "Now it happened as they went that they entered a certain village, and a certain woman named Martha welcomed him into her house. And she had a sister called Mary, who sat at Jesus' feet and heard his word. But Martha was distracted." See, hear that? Distracted with much serving. "And she approached him and said, 'Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Therefore, tell her to help me.'" Can you just imagine this coming to Jesus? "Tell my sister to help me. I'm all alone." 41 says, "And Jesus answered and said, 'Martha, Martha, you're worried and troubled about many things.'" Just pause. Just pause a second. I think Jesus would say to many of us today, we're worried and troubled about many things. 42 says, "But one thing is needed, and Mary has chosen the good part, which will not be taken from her." Only one thing is needed. In his presence is everything else fades away. And he just says, choose the one thing. That's what's important. Verse 4 says, "And the posts of the door were shaken by the voice of him who cried out, and the house was filled with smoke." I remember years ago at a pastor's retreat, I'd worked all night. We drove several hours to get there. I'm exhausted, sitting in the last row. And as they stand to worship, I'm sitting there just exhausted. And the Lord said to me, "Am I not worthy of your worship?" And I said, "Of course you are." And I stood in a difficult place for me physically, lifted my hands and worshiped, and the presence of the Lord filled that place. Can I just say to you today that whatever's going on in your life, you need priorities to put Him first and allow worship to flow from your heart. In Jesus' name, we just pray that today, wherever you are, that you'll pause and allow His presence to fill your heart and your life. Whatever the distractions you have, today may the presence of the Lord be with you. In Jesus' name. God bless you. See you next week.